last three videos, I tried to explain regarding the basic kinetics, kinematics, and various types of joint. So today I'm going to explain about the shoulder complex, basic biomechanics and anatomy of the shoulder complex in particular. Okay, when you think about the shoulder complex, as we studied earlier, what are the joints forming the shoulder complex? We have the glenohumeral joint, acromioclavicular joint, and sternoclavicular joint. These three joints are considered as the structural joints or the anatomical joint. And the scapulothoracic joint is considered as the functional joint or the non-structural joint or the non-anatomical joint. And when you think about the shoulder joint, let us see what is the closed packed position as well as the loose packed position of the shoulder joint. First, let us see what is a closed packed position. A closed packed position means it's a position where the articulating surfaces are in full contact with each other. Okay, the articulating surfaces are in maximum contact with each other. The ligaments and the joint capsule are in the tight position. The ligaments and joint capsule are in the tight position, and minimal joint play is possible. That means, what do you mean by minimum joint play? Means the mobility is less. And when the mobility is less, on the other hand, we have the maximum stability. Okay, so in a closed packed position is the position where the articulating surfaces are in maximum contact with each other. The ligaments and the joint capsules are in the maximum tight positions. There is less mobility occurs in this position, and there is maximum stability occurs in this position. And in the shoulder joint, abduction and lateral rotator position is considered as the abduction, and lateral rotator position is considered as the closed packed position in the shoulder joint. Again, abduction and lateral rotation is considered as the closed packed position in the shoulder joint. Next, let us see the loose packed position, or in some books they say it as open packed position. Just the opposite of closed packed position. What is a loose packed position? Loose packed position is the position in which the articulating surfaces are in minimal contact with each other. Okay. Secondly, the ligaments and the joint capsule are not in the tight position. They are in the loose position or in the lax position. Okay, and there is maximum joint play is possible, means there is maximum mobility possible at this position. And when there is maximum mobility, you have to compromise for the stability function, and this position is considered as the minimal stable position of the shoulder joint. So loose pike position is the position in which there is a minimal contact between the articulating surfaces. The ligaments and the joint capsules are in the lax position. There is maximum movement possible in this position, and there is minimal stability is attained in this position. What is this position? In the shoulder joint, 30 degrees of flexion, 60 degrees of 30 degrees of flexion, 60 degrees of abduction, and slight internal rotation is considered as the loose packed position of the shoulder joint. Once again, 30 degrees of flexion, 60 degrees of abduction, and slight internal rotation is considered as the loose packed position of the shoulder joint. Next is, what is the capsular pattern of restriction in the shoulder joint? What is the capsular pattern of restriction? What do you mean by the capsular pattern? Means This happen mainly in the pathological condition. I will explain about the pathological condition once we comes to that topic. Especially during the adhesive capsulitis or frozen shoulder, the capsule, there is a restrictions of movement occurs in the capsule. So in that situation, there is a capsular pattern of restriction happen in the shoulder joint. So usually the capsular pattern is considered as external rotation. There is a minimal external rotation followed by abduction and internal rotation. So capsular pattern of restriction, the movement pattern in the capsular pattern of restriction is external rotation followed by abduction followed by internal rotation. That is, minimal external rotation is possible. The external rotation movements are not possible in case of capsular pattern of restriction followed by abduction and internal rotation. Okay. And since we finish with the capsular pattern, let us start with the joint capsule of the shoulder joint. What do you mean by the joint capsule? Joint capsule is actually a fibrous sheath which encloses the entire joint, which encloses the entire shoulder joint. That is, the joint capsule of the shoulder joint arises from the anatomical neck of the humerus. Here you can see this red marking is the anatomical neck of the humerus. Where you can see the anatomical neck. Anatomical neck is the area which is seen between the head of the humerus and between the tuberosities, between the lesser and greater tuberosities, is considered as the anatomical neck. So and what is the surgical neck? Surgical neck is this green marking which is seen between the tubercles as well as the shaft is called the surgical neck, which is considered as the area which is more prone to get fracture, is the surgical neck. So anatomical neck is the area between the head of the humerus and between these tuberosities, the lesser as well as the greater tuberosities. The middle side is the lesser tuberosity and the lateral side is the greater tuberosity. So the joint capsule arises from the anatomical neck of the humerus and which attach to the glenoid cavity, especially to the rim of the glenoid labrum. So this capsule is a sealed capsule. It totally covers the head of the humerus from the anatomical neck to the glenoid fossa. Okay, and this joint capsule is a sealed capsule. Why I am specifying as a sealed capsule? The next topic is the stability of the shoulder joint, where the importance of sealed capsule we are going to study. Okay, and how this joint capsule is reinforced. The joint capsule is reinforced superiorly by the supraspinatus muscle, by the tendon of the supraspinatus muscle, and inferiorly by the tendon of the long head of triceps muscle. And anteriorly, the joint capsule is reinforced by the tendon of subscapularis, anteriorly by the tendon of the subscapularis, and posteriorly the joint capsule is reinforced mainly by the two muscles, that is the tendon of the infraspinatus and teres minor. That's how this joint capsule is reinforced by the ligaments. Okay. And during the close packed position, these joint capsules is actually in the tight position. Okay. And usually in the shoulder joint capsule, laxity is one of the main characteristic feature of shoulder joint capsule. That's the reason why the joint capsule, the shoulder range of motion is maximum compared to other joints in the human body. And this shoulder joint capsule is thickened superiorly and inferiorly. This shoulder joint capsule is thickened superiorly and inferiorly. And when I told about the capsular pattern of restriction, I told that external rotation is restricted, followed by abduction and internal rotation. Let us think why the external rotation and abduction is maximum restricted during capsular pattern. Why? This is because in the normal position, in the normal standing position, what is the position of the dependent arm? When you are in the standing position, what is the position of the arm when it is hanging by the side? The arm is in the adducted and internally rotated position. The arm is in the adducted and the internally rotated position when the arm is hanging by the side. Even though the anatomical position of the body is the arms are facing forward. But in a normal standing position, we are not standing with the arms facing forwards. The arms are in the adducted and the internally rotated position, and when there is any pathological condition occurs, what happened due to this position, this joint capsule, especially the inferior joint capsule, will go for contracture, which result in the abduction, and external rotation restriction occurs at the shoulder joint during the capsular pattern of restriction occurs, which you can see in the frozen shoulder or adhesive capsulitis. So hope you understand the joint capsule. Okay, next let us see about the labrum, the glenoid labrum. What do you mean by the glenoid labrum? You can see the when compared to the head of the humerus, the glenoid cavity is small, or it is not deep, or in other words, it is shallow. The glenoid fossa or the glenoid cavity is shallow compared to the head of the humerus. The head of the humerus is comparatively larger than the glenoid cavity. How then, let us see how this larger head of the humerus accommodate inside this shallow glenoid fossa, because of the glenoid labrum. So what is glenoid labrum? Glenoid labrum is a fibrocartilaginous sheath which encloses the entire glenoid fossa. Fibrocartilaginous sheath which encloses the entire glenoid fossa. And what is the function of this glenoid labrum? The function of the glenoid labrum is to deepen the articulating surface of the glenoid fossa so that the head of the humerus can deeply articulate inside the glenoid fossa. Thereby, we can prevent the dislocations of the shoulder joint. You got it? Yes. And how this glenoid labrum is reinforced? The glenoid labrum is reinforced superiorly by the tendon of the long head of biceps. Very, very important. Superiorly, the glenoid labrum is reinforced by the tendon of the long head of the long head of biceps. Why I'm telling that it is very, very important is that we are going to see in more detail about this glenoid labrum and the long head of the tendon when you are coming to shoulder dislocation, especially the labral tears in case of slap lesion, superior labrum anterior posterior injury. So the superiorly the glenoid labrum is reinforced by the tendon of long head of biceps, and then the anteriorly and posteriorly. Anteriorly by the glenohumeral ligament. The glenohumeral ligament, the middle glenohumeral ligament by the glenoid labrum is reinforced anteriorly by the middle glenohumeral ligament and inferiorly by the inferior glenohumeral ligament. Okay, as you know, the inferior glenohumeral ligament has got two bands, the anterior and the posterior band. So the posterior aspect of the glenoid labrum is reinforced mainly by the posterior band of the inferior glenohumeral ligament. We'll see more about the glenohumeral ligament once we come to the ligaments. So that's about the glenoid labrum. So glenoid labrum is a fibrocartilaginous sheath which covers the glenoid fossa. The function is to deepen the glenoid fossa so that the head of the humerus can firmly articulate with the glenoid fossa, which in turn will prevent the dislocation of the head of the humerus from the glenoid cavity. And the glenoid fossa is reinforced superiorly by the tendon of the long head of biceps, and anteriorly and inferiorly it is reinforced by the glenohumeral ligament, mainly the middle and the inferior glenohumeral ligament. Okay. And next we'll see about the ligaments of the glenohumeral joint. The ligaments of the glenohumeral joint. When you think about the ligaments of the glenohumeral joint, we have mainly four ligaments. And in these four ligaments, two ligaments are of two ligaments are mainly of main importance. The first one is the glenohumeral ligament. Okay, so from the name itself, it arises from the glenoid fossa to the head of the humerus. Okay, and the glenohumeral ligament can be divided into mainly three subdivisions: the superior glenohumeral ligament, the middle glenohumeral ligament, and the inferior glenohumeral ligament. And the superior, let us take the superior glenohumeral ligament. Okay, so how the superior glenohumeral ligament, which all movements the superior glenohumeral ligaments prevent? So in the arthrokinematics of the shoulder joint, which is the superior motion of the head of the in which movement there is a superior rotation of the head of the humerus take place? During adduction of the shoulder. During adduction of the shoulder, the head of the humerus is moving superiorly. So the adduction movement, over adduction movement, is prevented by the superior glenohumeral ligament, or during adduction the superior glenohumeral ligament is taut during adduction. And coming to the middle glenohumeral ligament, the middle glenohumeral ligament prevent the external rotation of the shoulder. What is external rotation? What is happening during external rotation? External rotation of the shoulder. What is happening during the external rotation of the shoulder? In the external rotation of the shoulder, what is happening to the head of the humerus? The head of the humerus is rolling anteriorly. The head of the humerus is rolling anteriorly. Okay, during external rotation, the head of the humerus is rolling anteriorly. And what happened? The over external rotation is prevented by the tightness that is happening at the middle glenohumeral ligament. Okay. And next comes the inferior glenohumeral ligament. And in some book, it also says that the middle glenohumeral ligament prevent both abduction as well as external rotation. Okay, so during abduction also the middle glenohumeral ligament exert a pull on the head of the humerus. Okay. Then comes to the inferior glenohumeral ligament. The inferior glenohumeral ligament has got two portions, an anterior band and the posterior band. Okay. So when you take in general about the inferior glenohumeral ligament, the inferior glenohumeral ligament prevent which movement? The inferior glenohumeral ligament prevent the abduction movement, that is the inferior movement of the head of the humerus. So when the head of the humerus moves inferiorly, what happens? The inferior glenohumeral ligament will pull the head of the humerus and prevent over abduction movement, thereby preventing the injury to the shoulder joint. So the abduction movement is prevented by the inferior glenohumeral ligament. The abduction movement is prevented by the inferior glenohumeral ligament. And again, as I told, the anterior band and the posterior band. The posterior band of the inferior glenohumeral ligament prevent the internal rotation. So what is an internal rotation? Internal rotation is actually a posterior rolling of the head of the humerus. Internal rotation is prevented by the posterior band of the inferior glenohumeral ligament. Posterior band of the inferior glenohumeral ligament. Okay, so next let us see about the coracohumeral ligament. Coracohumeral ligament. So the coracohumeral ligament arises from the coracoid process and inserted to the head of the humerus. Coracohumeral ligament. And these coracohumeral ligaments again has got an medial and as well as the lateral band. So the medial band arises from the coracoid humerus and it get attached to the coracoid process, and it get attached. It arises from the coracoid process and it get attached to the medial tuberosity, whereas the lateral band arises from the coracoid process attached to the greater tuberosity. Okay, and this coracohumeral ligament mainly prevents any external rotation movement. So when we try to do the external rotation, which all the ligaments which will prevent the external rotation mainly by the middle fibers of the glenohumeral ligament as well as the coracohumeral ligament. Okay. And next ligament is the coracoclavicular ligament. Okay. The coracoclavicular ligament. The coracoclavicular ligament is one of the main ligament of the acromioclavicular joint, the AC joint, acromioclavicular joint. And this coracoclavicular ligament has got mainly two bands. A medial band is called the conoid ligament and the lateral band is called the trapezoid ligament. And the last ligament is the coracoacromial ligament. So the coracoacromial ligament is actually a part of the coracoid process, the acromion process, as well as the coracoacromial ligament, which forms the coracoacromial arch. What is the function of the coracoacromial arch? This will prevent any upward translatory movement of the head of the humerus. How this upward translatory movement occurs, that we are going to see our coming topics. The dynamic stability of the shoulder joint, I'm going to explain the upward translatory pull and the downward translatory pull. So the coracoacromial arch, which includes the coracoid process, anteriorly the acromial process which moves from the laterally, and the coracoacromial ligament forms an arch which will prevent any upward movement of the head of the humerus, as well as it will prevent any direct injury to the head of the humerus. So these are some of the basic anatomy as well as the biomechanics about the shoulder ligaments, joint capsule, and the glenoid labrum. Thank you.